journalism at its best is an exercise in reflected glory. You write about really interesting people in the hopes that the world thinks that you're really interesting. And this was never more true than when I wrote about Paco Underhill many years ago. Paco is an urban anthropologist, meaning he writes about the interaction of people and spaces. And one of his great current passions is airports. And he's going to talk to us about how to fix the airport, right? And I'm going to stay out of the way and hope that by osmosis I'll seem as fascinating as you are.
You know, Malcolm, since you did that piece, The Science of Shopping, almost 12 years ago, I have a question that I've wanted to ask you in a public forum for 12 years now, which is, you described me in that piece as almost goofy looking.
That may have been inserted by editors.
And I sort of wanted to ask on the one hand, but was it a little bit the pot calling the kettle black here? But perhaps better said is, have I gotten any better in 12 years?
You are decidedly less goofy looking than when I met you.
Thank you, Malcolm. We both know that nerds rule, right? Yes. My day job is being the chief executive officer of a research and consulting firm. We have maybe 170 employees, and we look at the interaction between people, spaces, products, and services. Roughly 30 or 40% of our work is looking at prototype stores. Whether it's a new Carrefour, a new Pão de Açúcar in Brazil, whether it's the new Adidas in Moscow, or a prototype Samsung store in Istanbul, we function all over the world. Part of what that means here is that I come to the issue of airports not just with a sense of professional interest, but also with something personal. I can tell you that in the month of April, every Monday I have been in a different continent than I was the previous Friday, okay? Including today here. I start here in New York. In Monday I will be looking at a new airport in Singapore. It doesn't matter where we're working, whether it's the new Indira Gandhi Airport in Delhi, or whether it's looking at Dublin Airport, or it's looking at stores. We have a series of issues that come up in every single job that we do. The first is that our visual language is evolving faster than our spoken or written word. That the basic premise is that the connection between our eyes and our brains has never been better. Thanks to the internet, thanks to movies, thanks to television, the way we process visually is extraordinary. On the other hand, our eyes have never been more tired. And that if we go to the design studios, whether it's in New York or Delhi or Paris or Tokyo here, the person sitting at the CAD CAM screen doing the actual design work, whether it's on an airport or a package or a store or a building like this, is generally under age 30. And the way their eyes see and the way many of us who are over age 30 see is different. Second issue here, and one that is poignant, is that we live in a world that is owned by men, designed by men, managed by men, and yet we expect women to participate in it. And whether we're talking about the design of a dressing room at an H&M store or a Saks, or we're talking about the design of a petrol or the gas pump for the new prototype Exxon Mobil store, or we're talking about the airport. One of the questions that we are asking in almost every phase of the process is what makes this either female-friendly or female-challenged. Third issue, which is something that all of us recognize from our own airport work, is that time comes in three forms: real time, perceived time, and a combination of the two. And that whether I'm talking about my experience at a Walmart or Target or a Carrefour or a casino, if you ask somebody walking out the door how much time they spent in the store, they inflate that time by roughly 50%. The same is true in the context of an airport, which is that if you ask somebody, how long did you spend in a security line? Or how long did you spend checking in? That the clock inside our heads has generally inflated that time. The final issue here, which is, again, as poignant in the world of retail as it is in the world of airports, which is that what is global and what is local? Meaning that if I'm thinking about the world of airports, that the difference between Heathrow and Dubai Airport, or the difference between Orlando and O'Hare, are driven by some very predictable factors. Whether it's the range or diversity in terms of ethnicity of the travelers, or it's the relative level or the ratios between the experienced and the novice traveler. And that, therefore, as we deal with the planning issues for an airport, how do we predict what that functionality is? How do we make it different? I think almost all of us agree that the airport experience is miserable. Almost all airports, particularly those here in North America, weren't made for what's happening in them. I think of the modern airport as a little like Berlin, where we have this city to which we have put a Berlin Wall through. And there's a checkpoint Charlie where we have to pass through. The basic concept of an airport or a transportation facility was never conceived with the idea of this wall. So what do we have to deal with here? First, the basic thought of an airport needs to be rethought. How we deal with luggage, or the simple fact that whether I'm designing a hotel with a revolving door or I'm designing an airport, the fact that physically we are carrying backpacks and we're pulling, rolling luggage changes physically the body bubble that we occupy. And that therefore, whether we're talking about how we move or how we negotiate or how we even get through a security check, part of what we have to conceive of here isn't the way we sit as I stand here, but how we fit in terms of a world where as we move through an airport, most people have only one hand free, if that. And therefore, our sense of mobility and the ergometrics of how we interact with that space is predictable. We have an information cacophony, which is that we tend, again, airports, stores, fast food, we tend to build the physical architecture of our lives and then retrofit it with information. Meaning someone builds the building and then somehow figures out afterwards where we put the information. We call this an information architecture challenge. One of the things we try to get people to do is think about what is the hierarchy and opportunity to communicate as people move through a facility. Meaning, what do I want to communicate as somebody steps off a curb? What do I want to communicate as somebody walks in the door? What do I want to communicate at each point along the way, and understand the nature of the physical opportunity and what someone's doing while they're doing it. We want security to be proactive rather than reactive. This is something where, in hushed conversations with Homeland Security, we've been talking about what the different protocols are to be able to go into an airport and start to predict where our trouble spots are, so that we aren't dealing with the Berlin Wall, we are dealing with, from the standpoint of both human intelligence and different ways of using our video surveillance to be able to look at where our potential problem spots are. Clearly, if we think about an airport, there are some basic creature comforts. I want clean restrooms. I want good food. I want a comfortable place to sit. I may want free Wi-Fi. I want something that understands that that physical environment has been thought through in a way that makes sense. One of the seminal experiences early in my career is I witnessed an argument between Jack Fruin, who was the head engineer for the Port Authority, building Newark Airport almost 30 years ago, and Irving Goffman, the eminent sociologist from the University of Pennsylvania. And Jack was going, I need information. I want you to feed me. My engineers are sitting here trying to build this airport, and we're making design decisions every day. And the academician kept backing up. And I realized then, in terms of my own career, I'd rather work for Jack any day than to sit in an ivory tower. I would rather make the decision than talk about making the decision. The filthiest place in the first world is the bathroom in the economy section of an airplane. Okay? The filthiest place on earth. Okay? I'm also I asked the question to Boeing not that long ago. How come everywhere else in the world we have men's rooms and ladies' rooms, but not on an airplane? Good. Can we assume something, which is that as we move through the 21st century, having gone through 9/11 and other experiences, that as we move through a public facility at an airport, there's a willing suspension of some of our concepts of what our personal liberties are. That if you want to be, who you are and have your privacy, then don't go to an airport, because all of us deserve something else. The final point here, which is, again, one that as a New Yorker I feel very strongly about, is that so many of our airports, both here in North America, but even more so offshore, are either being operated by a private company, like BAA in terms of Heathrow and Gatwick, or with a semi-autonomous, quasi-public agency like the Port Authority of New York. Every time I go to get my luggage at Newark or LaGuardia, and I'm swarmed by people offering me limousine rides into the city, I'm going, what third world country am I living in where no one's taking physical control of the space? Or the fact that you cannot get a healthy meal at a New York airport unless you bring it yourself here and somehow figure out a way to get it through the security process here, Is that 8 ounces or 4 ounces of applesauce? I don't know. Okay. Next slide, please. Here. Again, a miserable place here. Next one, please. The Berlin Wall. I think it's interesting in a way that even the security checkpoints here haven't been thought. They've been cobbled together with tables and whatever. That the simple process of figuring out what somebody has to do at that security point in terms of taking off their shoes or doing whatever, or how I unpack my luggage to get to the laptop, or the simple frustration that many of us have who travel for a living here of the person immediately ahead of us, waits until the last possible moment to start unhooking the cell phone and emptying his pockets and doing something. It just drives me nuts. Next slide, please. Checkpoint Charlie here. Has anyone had a pleasant experience at security? I mean, it's a Stasi moment here. The East German police here, and I think some of the people doing it. Some of it is that it's such a bullshit moment here in terms of thinking that this is actually secure. Okay. Next slide, please. I throw up these numbers here, and I want you to take them with a grain of salt. The numbers here basically show the ratio of what we do on the divide, which in the airport world we call it landside and airside. Okay, and that roughly half an hour is what we spend on the land side of the equation. Now, some of you go, I was 2 hours in O'Hare, checking in, whatever. But in terms of the basic ratios here, if there's no layover, there's no crisis at an airport, this is what the ratio is, which is 1/3 of the time we spend on the land side, 2/3 of the time that we spend on the air side. Average check-in time, 10 minutes. Average time going through security is 5. That 13% of us consume some form of food and beverage on the land side. An enormous number of us consume food and beverage on the other side. One of the trade-offs that we've been working on is the trade-off between duty-free and food and drink. And this is something we're going to look at a little later. So, of the people going through this process, again, that land side, air side here, which often, in the context of many of our airports, because of the checkpoint Charlie, there's no even divide. How many people go to the bathroom? This was an astonishing number to stand up in front of someone and say, over half of us in an airport are using the restroom before we get on the plane. And that therefore, in terms of the design of a restroom, the number of stalls, the fact that, again, a battle we fight, which is that you can service almost twice the number of men in the same footprint in a men's room as you can in a ladies' room. And why the ratios haven't been adjusted here, not based on space, but on the number of places or the number of people that you can serve. Airports are not equal. Vegas, whatever. Anyone been through Vegas recently, the Vegas airport? And it is a nightmare simply because you have no way of being able to separate out the different categories of people moving through the secure process. Next one, please. Airport shopping. Too expensive. I'm just looking. I'm killing time. But I'm dragging my suitcase and I'm wearing my backpack at the same time. Okay? And why don't we get better bags here? In Brazil, we've been working with our client there to look at, if I'm running a duty-free business, why can't I get somebody to shop online first before I go to the airport and then just pick up my purchases plainside? And that the actual physical space that I do and the efficiencies of the process are tied into the internet. How do we get good food? In Stockholm, in Dubai, in whatever, I can eat well in an airport. Just like the question, does anyone go to a shopping mall to eat anymore? Much less to start with here. Next slide, please. Uncomfortable waiting. This is an airport in Dublin here where somebody's had the audacity to put in metal chairs. Metal chairs shouldn't be part of an airport lexicon. Are they comfortable? Anyone been comfortable sitting in a metal chair? What were they thinking? We have intrusive TV. I keep trying to buy on the internet this device that they sell where you can walk into an airport and turn on Wolf Blitzer here. Okay? I'm sorry, I don't want TV every place that I go here. Picking up your luggage. It's a miserable place. Okay? What the closest parallel to a modern airport is a Cineplex. In a Cineplex, everyone is moving with time, bathroom, and food anxieties. Okay? Everyone is also moving in a Cineplex in the context of their own personal bubble. Which means that there is very few moments in an airport or a Cineplex where there's really some form of common identity. André Bazin, talking about the theater, said that we watch a theatrical performance as an audience. There's a collective. When we watch a movie, we watch it alone. Which is the reason why we can have two people watching a movie and have completely different reactions to it. The same goes for an airport, because it's only in crisis that we form some form of common bond with our fellow travelers. Now, I ask the question, whether it's a Cineplex or an airport, is there a better way of being able to deal with it? What's our reinvention process? First, we want to control the entire property. Just as when I talked to a shopping mall developer in 2008, it is not sufficient just to be a landlord, you have to be a placemaker. And one of the ways that you are a placemaker is taking control of the entire pad. Meaning that in the chaos of waiting, if there's somebody out there managing the process, the perceived wait time drops off. Security starts in the parking lot. Security starts maybe even having a video surveillance system that simply recognizes when somebody hands someone a package in an airport, maybe that's somebody that you want to talk to. How do I run, whether it's kiss and ride, which we do at some of our New York train stations, or having a cell phone wait area? I mean, the idea at Newark that there are people who drive round and round talking on their cell phones, trying to pick up whoever their traveler is, because no one's thought about having a cell phone wait cell. You pull in here and wait, your husband arrives, calls you, and you swing by to pick him up. There's some form of efficiencies there. That there's a cell phone or there's a kiosk-based system. We recognize one of the things about self-check-in, and is something that has changed for the positive, is that when you stop dealing with somebody nose to nose over a counter and deal with them side to side, the dynamic changes. And therefore, the tension in an airport check-in or a hotel check-in is when the person who's helping you is not across from you but next to you, is a discernible difference. Healthy food choices. Just again, even as we deal in the world of the UAE, the Dubai, is letting everyone know that the entire airport is a halal facility, meaning that everything that is served in terms of flesh has been appropriately killed in terms of Islamic hygiene rules. How do we deal with the tap and go? If I can do it at the mobile pump, why can't I do it in the context of an airport store where I tap the credit card and move on? That pay point issue, for particularly those of us with the anxiety of an airport, is something where we can cut down the amount of time. How do I deal with improved seating? I love the fact that in the Charlotte airport there are rocking chairs. That is a very soothing moment, okay? But getting beyond the rocking chair, how can we put in the movable seating? And I love that Holly White, just the preeminent New Yorker talking about public spaces, talked about the fact that almost all successful public spaces have some form of movable seating. And that somebody doesn't actually move it very far, but the idea that we can tilt it and angle it just a little bit is seemingly very important to us. Free Wi-Fi. If we're stuck, nothing helps time go faster than if I can simply log on and let it go. We're getting this in some places. Orlando, other forms of airports are starting to recognize this is a huge advantage and something that can be sponsored. But the other piece of it is recognizing that so many of us are struggling to find a place to plug in. We've got our laptops, our mobile phones, we want to recharge it. Almost no waiting areas are conceived of the fact that many of us live a life where we need to plug in. I end up believing in three things with messianic fervor. The first is that amenability and profitability are linked. There is no reason not to think about the human good because it turns into a positive experience, which turns into positive cash flow. Second is that giving good airport is looking at the interrelationship between the physical design of the space, the information structure and the services operating on the inside, and what its operating culture is. And that the easiest thing to change is the physical design. The hardest thing is what its operating culture is. And finally, I believe passionately in rubber-soled shoes, which is that we live our lives having fallen in love with our Excel spreadsheets and the process of thinking sitting down. As somebody who works on airports and stores and banks and whatever, I often see the best of ideas fail for the stupidest of reasons because no one has taken the time to go out and take a look. Thank you for listening.
A couple of very quick questions in the time we have left. Who does it best? If you have to, what's the one airport in the world that you think best?
Well, I will land on Sunday morning at the Singapore airport, which has playgrounds in it.
Wow.
Part of what we're looking at, Malcolm, is that the cutting edge of so many things is in places where money is young. Mm-hmm. Money isn't young in New York or Paris or Tokyo. Money is young in places like Dubai or Singapore or Sao Paulo or Moscow.
The other question I had was, is the airport experience inherently unpleasant? That is to say, is the best that we can do is to distract the traveler, or is there some way to actually make the process of getting on a plane as pleasurable as, I mean, do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. One of the challenges that we face is economics, that if I'm Emirates Airline and I've sold you a first-class seat New York, Dubai, New York for $10,000, I can afford to do stuff with you that I can't afford if I'm flying JetBlue and going to Miami. I think we have to start, in terms of the general good, is lowering the miserable quality of it. And let's figure out the niceties later.
Yeah. Good. Thank you very much, Paco.
Thank you, my friend.